And it's a pleasure to be here with you all. And I'm Bill Johnston, and we have a nice group of folks with us today. So I appreciate you all. What do you see when you think about the foyer of your funeral home on the screen in your mind? What do you see when you think about your main visitation room on the screen in your mind? And what do you see when you think about your chapel on the screen in your mind? Well, I can guarantee you that I asked you those three questions. Each one of you saw your foyer, your visitation room, and your chapel. Why? Well, the answer, according to Dr. William Glasser, who is the late celebrated American psychiatrist, he said that we think in pictures and we speak in words. So let me repeat that again. We think in pictures and we speak in words. Now, when consumers think about your funeral home, what pictures do they see? Do they see a picture like this? And this is a legitimate Facebook post for a funeral home. Go hiking in a rainforest. Or do they see a picture of a funeral professional who can guide them through the process? Or maybe they see an image of a funeral professional in a chapel where a life will be celebrated. Will they see a picture like this? Another funeral home post. Have your cake and eat it too. Enjoy National Chocolate Day. Or will they see a picture of someone that can help them pre-plan a funeral? Well, what is not an ideal situation is if they see no picture at all. Well, today's session is how to be known, how to be trusted, and how to be celebrated on Facebook. Simple idea. I am your host. I'm Bill Johnston, and I've written this book. It's called How Facebook Works for Funeral Homes, available on Amazon.com right now, but it's also the basis of today's presentation. If I ask 50 funeral professionals to define what social media is, I think I get 50 different answers. But if I ask those same 50 funeral professionals what local advertising is, I think I get the same answers. It's television, it's radio, it's cable TV, or it's newspaper. But there is one media perceptually that's missing. It's the media that reaches 70% of all adults in your market. It reaches 73% of adults 50 to 64. It reaches 77%, 3 out of 4 women, and it reaches half the market 65 plus. And these are big demographics for anyone in the funeral industry. Well, I can tell you there's not one television station, one radio station, one cable channel, or one newspaper bigger in your market than Facebook. Facebook is the biggest local media in your market. And today's session is all about effective local advertising. This is the kind of advertising that's designed to expand your visibility in your community, expand the reputation of your brand, and if you do it in a certain way, expand your business. Expand your business. So, what is Facebook? What is Facebook? Well, to understand what Facebook is, and I'm a media guy, I spent 25 years in broadcasting. I have a degree in television and radio, and also spent about 15 years in interactive media. So I'm familiar with what media is. What is Facebook? A lot of times when I ask people what Facebook is, it's kind of like asking them what social media is. Someone will say, well, Facebook is social media. And then I say, well, great. If Facebook is social media, what is social media? And that's where everything gets fuzzy. So I'm going to define what Facebook is in 2 words. When we finish this piece, you'll be able to define what Facebook is using 2 simple words. So the first thing I want to look at is the newspaper industry, because this is instructional. In the blue line that you see on the left, it reached $67 billion. That is the combined advertising sales for the newspaper industry in the year 2000. The newspaper was the biggest media in your market. It was so big, everybody got it. And I don't know about you, but when I was a kid, if you got your picture in the paper, it was a big deal. And here's my picture. This picture was taken 56 years ago. That's how important this picture was to me. And everybody saw my picture in the paper. All my friends at school, everybody my parents worked with, everybody I played basketball with or baseball with, they all saw this picture. Why? Why? Well, because the newspaper was so doggone big. Remember how tall the paper was, how wide it was, and remember how thick it was? It's the reason we recycle, because we got so many newspapers and it was obscene to consider throwing them away. Well, in the newspaper, for those of you who were around 20 years ago in this industry, you know that the obituary column was one of the most read, if not the most read page in the paper. Why? Well, the obituary then and now is powerful local news. But the other thing the obituary column did, it played a role in telling everyone in your community what funeral homes were popular and what funeral homes were not popular. I would consider it to be a daily market survey. And for the bigger funeral homes, it was clearly a daily advertisement of just how big they were and how important they were in serving the families in their communities. Well, what happened to that big newspaper? That big newspaper is gone. What happened with the obituary that was in the big newspaper? That's gone too. In fact, only 3%, and this number is probably too high now, only 3% of adults claim the newspaper is their main source of news. And so the simple question is, well, what happened? What happened? And the answer is two things happened in the year 2006 and 2007. First of all, Facebook was released and invented in the year 2006. And that was to a market of anybody 13 years of age or older with a valid email address. And the other thing that happened a year later, the smartphone was declared the invention of the year by Time Magazine, the iPhone. So if you remember this statistic of $67 billion, when it reached around 2006, it started to go, you know where, in a you know what. Where did they go? Where did all these readers go? And the answer is they went to Facebook. And so what we can say here today is, with two words, Facebook is the newspaper. Facebook is the newspaper. And now we're going to continue on how to be known, how to be trusted, and how to be celebrated on Facebook. I started in this business about 7 years ago. When I say in this business, I started working with funeral homes on Facebook. Paula Lau was my first client, and her husband, Jim, helped me answer a lot of questions about what funeral homes do, what funeral directors do. And so I asked many, many questions of Jim Lau. And the one question I asked him was, what made his firm unique? And without any hesitation, he said it was his people. So as I started to work with Lau Funeral Home and with Shoemate Falk Funeral Home in Goldsboro, North Carolina, I started taking pictures of people standing in foyers, people standing in visitation rooms next to lecterns, people in chapels. And those pictures were pretty powerful. People were interacting with them. But one of the things that Paula was concerned about was, all of our ads had something to do with death and the funeral process. And so did we want to consider doing something that would be light and fun instead of the post that we were doing? And so we talked about this concept of deathless topics. Deathless topics. For example, today, if we were to look at what today's deathless topics could be, it's False Confession Day. Yep, you might hear some big lies because someone may confess something to you, but they really didn't do it. Or how about this? This is perfect because it's just a few days before Thanksgiving. It's National Stuffing Day. This is the day that we share those recipes and prepare that stuffing for Thursday. And of course, today is World Hello Day. You know, we go through our days and we fail to wave at people or greet them properly. But this is the day that we say hello to everybody because it's World Hello Day. Well, you get the point. These have nothing to do with funeral homes. But what we figured out was posting and boosting for Paula and Jim was like our own organic marketing study. It was a free lesson. We had thousands of users in Burlington and Alamance County, North Carolina, giving us feedback on what we were doing for Lau Funeral Home on Facebook. And you know what we saw? We saw Facebook users liking our post, loving our post, and making all kinds of comments. So what were they saying? They were praising individual staff members, expressing gratitude for services provided months ago or years ago, and they were just doggone thankful that they were there. And so we figured this out. Facebook users love their funeral homes. Facebook users love their funeral homes. And so use pictures of faces on Facebook. The second step is, what do you say? What do you say? If you have a copy of my book, How Facebook Works for Funeral Homes, the whole back of the book is about topics that can be used to write ads. And I know that when we write topics for ads, it's easier to write an ad. I figured out a long time ago, took me a long time to figure out what topics would resonate with users and how to write an ad. But what I discovered after cutting out all of the ads that I had written for about a half a year, cutting them out, putting them in little stacks and organizing them, I saw topics appear from these stacks of paper. And so what I'm going to tell you is a secret, and that is this. Knowing the topic that you're writing about makes it easier to write copy. And write that down on your resource guide. Knowing the topic makes it easier to write a post. Knowing the topic. For example, if I said, let's write an ad about your funeral home, it's hard. It's 30-second ad, 60-second ad, maybe a Facebook post, 30 words, 40 words, 50 words. Try it. It's hard. But if I asked you to write an ad about what a funeral director does, now that's not so hard. Why? Why? The answer is, you know what a funeral director does. Chances are you are a funeral director. So here are some of the topics that we use to advertise for our clients on Facebook. One is funeral director branding. There's JB Rhodes in Eastern North Carolina, Ascension Funeral Home here in beautiful Mobile, Alabama, and Mitchell Jordan in Mattoon, Illinois. So when surviving family members embrace the funeral process, they can begin to see a glimmer of hope. Hope the hurting will soften and hope the healing will begin. That's what funeral directors like Andy Huffine help families see at Ridge Funeral Home. What do funeral directors do? They give families hope. Simple idea. Branding assistants is the same thought. One of the things we discovered is a lot of assistants are very popular in the community, and you'd be surprised which ones are. It could be somebody who's retired and now works for you part-time as a greeter or an assistant. Even people who were involved in the business office, they interact with families after the fact. They are very popular. And of course, therapy dogs like Daisy at the Earl Funeral Home in Blackwood, New Jersey. She's very popular as well. Here's an example of an ad for an assistant. The moment the immediate family realizes they're with their loved one for the last time, someone has to be there and someone has to care. At Fair Funeral Home, that's someone like Assistant Funeral Director Charles Fair. Make sense? Make sense? The third topic is pre-planning. I'm always amazed when we run pre-plan ads and people make phone calls and set up meetings to pre-plan a funeral. So we use images like this. We like graphics for pre-planning ads. Even when it's expected, death has a way of surprising us. Pre-planning brings clarity to the funeral process, so when it's time to celebrate a life, there are no surprises. Now, I wrote that ad about my mother. My mother was in hospice care for 8 months, but when she died, it was still a surprise. It was still a surprise. And so the way that I wrote that ad, I'm reminded of what Zig Ziglar describes what sales is. Zig Ziglar, who was the big motivational speaker and sales trainer in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, he said, sales is a transference of a feeling. And there's no doubt advertising for funeral homes on Facebook accomplishes that. Team processes was one of my favorite topics. So you're well on your way to being known, trusted, and celebrated on Facebook. You know what the first step is. And when we talked about faces on Facebook, Facebook users love their funeral homes. That's why we use pictures of faces on Facebook. The second step is, what do you say? And I've given you a number of examples of what to say on Facebook. And so the third step is about boosting posts. This is you spending money on Facebook, giving them money so that your ads are circulated on the news feed within 5 or 10 miles of your funeral home. So to help you better understand buying advertising, I'm going to teach you how advertising works. And I'm telling you, I spent 25 years in broadcasting. I have a degree in television and radio, but it wasn't until the last 3 years someone came to me and said, do you even know how this stuff works? And well, I learned how advertising worked. And because I was in radio, I figured out how to get results using radio as my advertising tool. And those who are in broadcasting will tell you it's tough to get results in radio. But if I could do it in radio, it's a whole lot easier to get results on Facebook. So this is my secret, how advertising works. And it's about the 4 pillars of effective local advertising. You need to do all 4. Imagine having a chair with 4 legs and someone coming in and saying, hey, let me borrow one of those legs. The chair won't work. You can't sit in it. And if you don't do all 4 pillars in advertising, your advertising will not work either. So here are the 4 pillars: reach, frequency, consistency, and copy. Boosting posts. Boosting posts. Here's a fact. Most funeral homes with Facebook pages rely on organic reach, free. Without boosted posts, their page may only reach 500 to 1,500 users a month. 500 to 1,500 users per month. That's not enough users to move the needle. If you think about the 4 pillars of effective local advertising, let's talk about reach. Reach. How many thousands of people do you need to reach to expand your business? Well, to help you understand that, it's instructional to know what the CDC death rate is. The CDC death rate is 867 per 100,000 people. Young, old, doesn't matter what the age is, 100,000 people, 867 deaths. So knowing that, you can scan this barcode or you can scan this QR code if you'd like, or you can go to my website, postandboost.com/reach, and that's where you'll find our reach calculator. This will help you understand how many people you need to reach if you wanted to grow. For example, for the audience of adults 35 plus, and that's the audience you should start with, adults 35 plus, how many should you be reaching every 30 days? Well, you can see here on this calculator, if your call volume is 250 calls per year, you should be reaching somewhere around 15,000 adults to maintain that level if you're advertising effectively. But if you wanted to grow, then you'd want to pick the call number that you want to be into. For example, let's say you wanted to grow to 300 calls a year. Well, you should be trying to reach 19 to 22,000 consumers within the 30-day period of adults over the age of 35. So there you go. Simple idea. That's how many you would try to reach. And so that's your overview on reach. Frequency is how many times to reach them in a month. How many times should you reach your target audience per month? In Facebook, we figured out it's about 3 to 6 times a month, 3 to 6 times per month. That's not a lot, but I'm going to tell you why that works later on in the webinar. Consistency, the 4 pillars of effective local advertising. Consistency. Consistent advertising builds an equity position in the mind of the consumer. So if you're always open, you should always be advertising. And the last pillar is copy. And this is the weakest part of all funeral home advertising, because it goes back to that whole idea of it's difficult to write ads because we don't know what to say. So how do you do this in Facebook? Well, create new posts with new pictures and then change the copy. Change the copy. Here's an example of copy. Families considering cremation find comfort when they include traditional funeral services. A visitation and celebration of life benefit everyone in the healing process. To discover the traditional cremation, call family-owned Forbes and Dick. There you go. Change the copy. So those are the 4 pillars. And so I'm going to now reveal our service at Post and Boost. This is what we do. This is our secret sauce. And I call buying ads on Facebook the quiet storm. You know, if you bought full page ads when the newspaper was around, or maybe you buy billboards or TV ads, even radio, when you buy all those media, the people who you compete against, who you share space in the funeral industry with, they see what you're doing and can respond in kind. But Facebook advertising is a little bit different. It's a little bit more stealthier. I call it the quiet storm. They will not know what you are doing, but you will. This is an exciting piece. We're going to talk about a consumer's journey to purchasing funeral services, a consumer's journey to purchasing funeral services. And to do this graphically, we use what's called a sales funnel. And these are the 4 phases a consumer can go through on their journey to purchasing funeral services: awareness, interest, desire, and action. So to help you understand how consumers interact with advertising, I like to tell this story that I told in Saratoga, New York a few months ago. In the room, I asked everybody in the room, would somebody identify the car that they just bought that they've been dreaming about all the time? And someone raised their hand and said, I've been dreaming about a red Mercedes for about a half a year, and I just bought one. Well, that was kind of cool to hear that. But here's the thing that I asked the question. I said, you were dreaming about buying this car. So that would mean that maybe you would wake up thinking about it. You'd go to sleep thinking about it. You would spend your day thinking about it. When you made the decision that this was your dream car and you wanted to own one, did something happen? Did you start seeing your dream car everywhere? And the answer is yes. Why? Why all of a sudden did it seem like every turn you made, there was a red Mercedes going in one direction or another? Well, the answer is the power of your subconscious mind. The power of your subconscious mind. Your subconscious mind is dedicated to doing 2 things. One is to keep you alive, keep you breathing, keep your heart pumping, but the other is your subconscious mind is dedicated to bringing into your life what you're thinking about most of the time. Forbes magazine did a great metaphor in what the power of your subconscious mind is. Forbes magazine said if your subconscious mind was a Maserati, then your conscious brain, the brain you're using right now, would have the power of a skateboard. Imagine that. Psychology Today, they said this: imagine for a moment your subconscious mind is like a giant filing cabinet, repeatedly being exposed to radio ads, TV ads, billboard ads with key messaging, Facebook ads could influence decisions, good or bad, towards the advertised product or service. Imagine that, advertising actually working. So let's look at the consumer's journey to purchasing funeral services, remembering that red Mercedes. The first part of the funnel is called the awareness phase. And the awareness phase is where there's the biggest group of consumers. And as you're advertising for them, you're advertising to make them aware of your business. But here's a question: will a consumer consciously, using that skateboard, consciously read or remember your ads? And the answer is probably not. Probably not. The consumer might see 3,000 to 5,000 ads in a day. But what you are doing, remembering the filing cabinet, is establishing an equity position in the mind of the consumer. In the second phase of the consumer's journey to purchasing funeral service, they might have an interest. So what would be the difference between someone in the awareness part of the funnel, and somebody with an interest? Well, they may have had a friend who lost somebody. Maybe they recently attended a funeral. So they've been around it, but it's not top of mind. So chances are they're going to interact with your advertising in the same way as they did in the awareness phase. It's in the desire phase when it all changes. Desire is the same place as somebody making a decision. And so if you remember, just like the dream car, you saw it everywhere. The question that I would have is, when a consumer is thinking about your funeral home, what pictures do they see? And I'm going to go back to that for a minute. In the desire phase, typically that's going to be when something is going to happen or something has happened. Imagine someone coming to you and saying, you are going to lose your mother or your father or somebody in the next 6 months, or maybe it even affects you. What do you think is going to be the top of mind thing that you're thinking about all the time? And the answer is death in the funeral process. And so if your subconscious mind is dedicated to bringing into your life what you're thinking about all the time, then a consumer is going to start thinking about the funeral process. And so the question would be, when consumers think about your funeral home, what pictures do they see? And my job for our customers is to give them those powerful pictures. So here's the funeral sales funnel: awareness, interest, desire, and action. Action, of course, is they make a phone call. They make a phone call. And if your advertising is reaching 10 to 25,000 consumers 4 to 6 times a month, what will they do when it's time to take action? What will they do? Are you going to rely on a Google ad and have them search on funeral home and hope that the name of your business shows up on the page, on the first page or at the top of the list? Or are they going to go to the internet and search for your funeral home? And that's the goal in all advertising, is you're the funeral home that they will think about, and you're the only call that they will make. I was encouraged by my conversation with Ann Williams at Coleman Heritage here in Alabama a couple of months ago. She described a situation where a gentleman in their community came into the funeral home, sat down with her and pre-planned the funeral. And at the end of the meeting, Ann asked a simple question: why did you pick our funeral home? Why did you come and see us? And this is somebody that she never met. He never met her, and he's never been to her funeral home ever before. And his answer was very simple. He said, I see your face on Facebook all the time. So you're smart now. You know how to be known and trusted and celebrated on Facebook. I look at this new customer that we have, Green Hills Funeral Home. They're in Middlesboro, Kentucky. And when we started working with them and talk about being known, trusted, and celebrated on Facebook, this was their first post. This was their first post. You can see 363 people liked or loved this first post. And what were consumers saying in their comments? Louise Elliott said, absolutely the best. Betty said, thanks for helping my family through more than one. Amy said, the best. I'll never forget how well they cared for my dad. And Regina said, cannot say enough wonderful things about this couple. These are celebrations, being known, trusted, and celebrated on Facebook. They got 88 comments on that post after just 2 days of being on Facebook and being boosted. But I can tell you that Jim Lau, who was our second funeral home client, 2 years ago, Jim died of COVID. And all of Alamance County knew he was in the hospital. And people were going to Facebook. And they were waiting to hear what was going on with Jim, good or bad. And I'm the one that had to write this post. It said, today we sadly announce the loss of our president, Jim Lau, a wonderful and inspiring man who has touched so many families for so many years. He went home to be with the Lord on Wednesday, September 1st. Growing up in the funeral industry, this was all he ever wanted to be, a funeral director, and that he was. Bigger than life, gentle to all, and a friend to so many. His passion, his spirit, and his love for his family, for Lau Funeral Home, and every staff member here will forever be felt. Well, I can tell you that the comments on Facebook are not the same comments that somebody who maybe was a doctor or a lawyer or somebody who was a great chef at a local restaurant, or maybe somebody that sold you furniture or your cars. No, all of the posts, all the comments had everything to do with Facebook users wanting to connect to Jim Lau, to tell their story, to tell them how deeply saddened they are, that they will miss him, and to connect with the family and give them their condolences. This is the kind of celebration that you don't give to somebody other than a fabulous funeral director. And if that's not a great example of how to be known, trusted, or celebrated on Facebook, I don't know what is. So I sure do appreciate everyone being with me. I talked as fast as I could, and I want to thank each and every one of you for participating in today's webinar. Are there any final questions that maybe somebody has, or have I covered everything today?